we are going to carry on with a little, we're going to do a little hip stuff. We're going to do a little pelvic floor stuff. And I think we'll probably do a little shoulder stuff as well. So let's start with a baseline inner thigh stretch. So grab whatever you like to use for bolstering if you're going to hold an inner thigh stretch for a minute. And I'd like you, even if you don't normally bolster, grab a little something and we'll do more of a release as well as a stretch. So remember, release is getting yourself into a position where you don't actually feel any stretching sensation. We hold you up a little bit more than that. So you could certainly have something behind your head. And we'll start with an actual stretch. So you want to go to a place where either you are not bolstered or where you are bolstered enough to prevent discomfort and to prevent your ribs from flaring up towards the ceiling, but not so much that you lose all sense of stretch. And initially, we can just kind of hang out here. And this is an assessment as much as anything else, just to notice what happens. What are your sensations? What's happening for your inner thighs? What's happening for your mid ribs and spine? When you bring your legs out to your sides, is your spine inclined to lift? Are your ribs flaring to the ceiling? Is there tension in your neck and shoulders? What is happening with all your various parts and bits and pieces? And then having established that, go for a little bit of bolstering. So grab something that is the right height to take you up to the place where you actually don't feel more than like a 1 out of 10 in terms of the amount of stretch for your inner thighs. And you will probably find that once you get to that place, your ribs and spine just easily settle down into the floor. You don't have to do anything to get them there. And then you can reach your arms for the ceiling and slide your arms out to the sides and pull back up. And slide out to the side and pull back up. And we're just adding a little bit of shoulder motion to keep you entertained while your hips hang out here. And as you're in this position with your arms flowing back and forth, you could start to check in with your pelvic floor and see if you can establish, do you have any unnecessary gripping or clenching in your pelvic floor? This is a great place to just be able to relax as much as your brain and your body are prepared to allow in this moment. And you're doing a really flowy arms out to the side and back. So this isn't really a working thing. It's more of an easing your shoulder muscles, easing your arm muscles. Last two with your arms. And last one. And then bring your arms down and bring your legs up. Take your feet wide and do a little windshield wiper. But see if you can focus on the idea that it's your leg moving in your hip socket and that your pelvis is going to move ever so slightly at the end of the range. You're really trying to keep your ribs pretty stable and you're keeping your butt fairly stable. So sometimes when we do a windshield wiper, we're really trying to get that low back and pelvis movement to follow your leg. Here, you're going to try and isolate the movement more into your hip sockets. Which probably means you're going to be moving a little bit more slowly and maybe not as far as you would be going if you took your pelvis along for the ride. Nice. One more on each side. And then come on back to center. And now grab your squishy ball. And we'll do a little inner thigh working. So same thing, you can have your head supported. You want to start with the ball halfway between your knees and your pelvis, with your feet mat distance apart, so wider than your knees, and with your feet pointing forward so that the outside edges of your feet line up with the outside edges of your mat, which might feel a bit pigeon-toed, but that's okay. And then put your hands right across your pelvis, and you want to squeeze the ball without letting your pelvis tuck or move, which I'm hoping is fairly straightforward with your legs in this position, and without gripping into your hip flexors. So you want the muscles along the fronts of your legs and the fronts of your hip joints to stay pretty relaxed. So another great reason to keep your hands across your pelvis, partly to feel for that non-moving of your pelvis and your lower back, and partly to just double check in. You can use your baby fingers along your hip crease to just make sure that we're really focusing on your inner thighs being the driving muscles. Couple more. And then squeeze and hold. And keep putting that effort into your inner thighs. You want your back to stay relaxed. Your stomach muscles could certainly come on as like an echo follow onto your inner thighs. Your pelvic floor might engage. So there's a difference between kind of chronic clenching, often because of stress or fatigue, and having your pelvic floor muscles contracting because there's work going on in that area. Your inner thighs and your pelvic floor are a great team. So let's see if we can generate that on purpose. So keep the squeeze, keep holding your inner thighs, working, working, working. Inhale to relax your pelvic floor without relaxing your inner thighs, and then blow out through your mouth. And think of the air traveling from your pelvic floor up through your abdominals, past your diaphragm, through your chest, and out your mouth. And then inhale and relax your pelvic floor, relax your stomach muscles. So this is a little bit tricky because you're asking your brain to do multiple things at the same time. You are trying to both maintain consistent squeeze, consistent tension of your inner thighs with releasing and recontracting your pelvic floor and your abdominal muscles. So if you're feeling a bit like, well, I don't know what I'm doing, you're okay. That's all right. One more breath. Or one more in-out breath cycle. And hopefully your inner thighs are quite tired by now. Like if you're really squeezing, that they're excellent. I'm glad. Okay, so you can lose the ball, bring your feet together, go back into the inner thigh stretch. So this would be either no bolstering or kind of the amount of bolstering you need to avoid discomfort in your hips. And bring your arms to the ceiling and make fists this time. So strong through your arms, straighten your elbows, plug your arms into your shoulder sockets and slide your arms out to your sides and pull back up towards the ceiling. So now the sort of the multiple tasks at hand are that you're keeping your arms really strong and contracted, even as you move them up and down, but you're keeping your hips and your legs relaxed into your inner thigh stretch. Nice. One more. Pause with your arms maybe 6 inches, 8 inches off the floor, and then make circles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. One more is 8, change directions. 8, 7, carry on at that pace. Last one. Excellent. Okay, relax your arms, bring your legs back up. And let's go into one of the bizarre, this affects your inner thighs, even though it's not an inner thigh, outer hip exercise. So you can roll over onto your side, either side. Bend your knees. Engage your trunk muscles. So think of kind of sliding the base of your ribs back towards the wall behind you. Think of your stomach muscles wrapping around your spine. So that, again, super stable through your trunk. And then your top knee is bent. Lift your top knee. Put your top hand on your pelvis so that you can, again, feel for stability. And then turn your leg in and turn your leg out. And turn your leg in and turn your leg out. So the goal is to spin your thigh bone in your hip socket, that your knee and your shin and your foot are going along for the ride. So your foot will end up pointing at the ceiling and pointing at the floor. Your knee will end up pointing at the ceiling and the floor. But the turn, the work, doesn't come from your knee and your foot. It comes from your inner thigh when you turn in and your outer, well, your inner hip when you turn in, your outer hip when you turn out. And you get the best bang for your buck if you're not moving your pelvis. Last two. And last one. Now hold in the turned out position and make circles, still without moving your pelvis, your spine, your ribs, or your shoulders. Last one, and change directions. Last two, and last one. And then bring your leg down. Oh, and then extend your top leg, long and straight, press your heel towards the wall in front of you, and press your leg up, and then come all the way down until you tap the floor with the inside edge of your foot. And press up without moving your pelvis, and tap the floor. Last two. And last one. And then bring your leg down. And while we're here, let's do a little rotation. So you can either keep your knees stacked one on top of the other, or you can bring your top shin down onto the floor and get your bottom leg out of the way, just for a slightly, I don't know, gets you a little bit more anchored, gets you a little bit more twist, but if it's not comfy for your hips, then that's not a worthwhile trade-off. Reach your top arm up for the ceiling. Really think of connecting your arm into your shoulder socket so that your arm isn't going to move back. Take a breath in, and on the exhale, twist your chest back. So your arm does move back in space, but it's about moving your torso. And then slide forward so your arm points to the ceiling. And twist back. And stack. So as you go, keep your top leg fixed and connected wherever it is, right? Either to your bottom leg or to the floor. Keep your pelvis relatively stable. And that means you don't twist super far. So if you're doing this twist and you're thinking, meh, this isn't really comfortable in my back, or this is kind of crunchy in my SI joints, it just means don't go so far. It means that because you've got your lower body fixed, there's a limit to how far your tissues want to go in that other direction. So just find the place that feels good for you. And on the next one, twist back and stay back. So your stomach muscles are rotated and they're working to hold you in place. They're lengthening in your twist and they're also working to hold you in space. And you add some circles. And then change directions. Last one. And then bring yourself all the way back up and relax your arm and roll over onto your back. And shockingly, go back into another inner thigh stretch. So feet together, knees out to the side, and just feel for what's going on with your ribs now. So if you're in the unbolstered position or minimally bolstered position, the way we were right at the beginning, what's happening with your spine and your rib cage compared to the way it was 20 minutes ago? If more down, lovely, excellent. And take a couple of breaths. And really feel for ease in your breathing. So the goal is not to force a big inhale, but to really allow the inhale. I heard this great image the other day of imagine that, well, I don't know, a useful image. It feels a little bit weird to me. Imagine there's holes poked all the way through your rib cage, which I found a bit, I don't know. I like the effect of it. I don't like the visual of it so much, but this idea that there's not a lot of resistance to your breath in this particular context, that your breath can just ease in and ease out, and your ribs have this really lovely, pliable response to your breath because there's lots of space. There's lots of space for the air to travel in and out sideways through these holes, like lacy bird cage holes in your rib cage. And then bring your legs back up and roll yourself over to your other side. And take a moment to get yourself restacked. So you've got your knees bent, you have your heels lined up with your sit bones. You want to make sure that you've got nice long length through the back of your neck and that you are well snuggled into your ribs. So you can feel that kind of base of your ribs easing slightly back towards the wall behind you, that you've got really good connection, active muscle on connection between the base of your ribs and your pelvis. And then lift your top leg with your knee bent and your foot flexed. So your ankle is active. And then turn your leg in and turn your leg out. And turn your leg in and turn your leg out. Susan, you'll modify this for whatever you need to do for your hip, right? Okay. So you can use your hand on your pelvis to make sure that you're not rolling your whole body back and forth or rolling your whole pelvis back and forth. You stay in whatever range is appropriate, and it doesn't need to be big. This can be pretty effective even if you're only turning a couple of inches. Last two. And then hold in the turned out position or as close to turn out as your body is prepared to go into on this side, and then circle. And the circling is coming right from your hip and taking your whole leg with you. Nice. Great. Change directions. Beautiful. Bring your leg down, let it rest for a moment. You all right, Susan? I know this one, that particular series just gets right into the spot for you, doesn't it? Okay, straighten out your top leg. Really reach your heel towards the bottom of your mat, towards the wall down by your foot. Keep your pelvis super stable. So now it's less about your pelvis rocking and it's more about your pelvis shortening up towards your ribs. And you want to avoid that as you slowly lift your leg and then come all the way down and tap the inner arch of your foot right down onto the floor. Press up and slide back down. Good. Last one. Excellent. And then bring your leg down, bend your knee again to stack your legs, or bend your knee and get your bottom leg out of the way, whichever is your preferred setup for side twisting. Reach your top arm up for the ceiling. Take a little moment to super fix your arm in your shoulder socket so that that straight line from your elbow to the center of your chest doesn't change, and twist back to whatever feels like the right range for you on this side and restack and twist and restack and carry on. So you're really using your stomach muscles to roll your chest back, your ribs back, and roll your chest and your ribs forward again. So it's not just your arm moving back and forth towards the ceiling. It's your rib cage tipping back towards the wall behind you, and then use your stomach muscles to roll your rib cage back up so the sides of your ribs point at the ceiling. Yeah. Beautiful. Last one. On this last one, stay back, excuse me, in the twisted position and make arm circles. 1, 2. Apparently I can't drink my tea properly. Hang on, I'm just going to mute myself for a moment. And then change directions. It's like I never disappeared. Check and make sure that your legs are still planted, that your lower back and your SI joints are still comfortable. Your abdominals are still on and strong. And last arm circle, and then use your obliques to roll you back up again. And bring your arm down, roll over onto your back. Before you go into your inner thigh stretch this time, you have your legs bent, you have your feet on the floor, feet together. Now slide your feet farther from your butt and then go out into your inner thigh stretch. So we're exploring a slightly different angle of your legs in your hip sockets. Slightly different load for your inner thigh muscles. So here, even though you maybe can do the normal version where your feet are in whatever is your habit without bolstering, because this is a different foot position and it's a different load on your hip muscles, you might want to bolster here. So if the backs of your hips are uncomfortable or your inner thighs are like, man, I don't like this line, stick something under your legs. And then let's add some external rotation for your shoulders. So reach your arms for the ceiling. And this time, spin your arms so that your palms are facing the back wall. Your thumbs are out to the sides. Your baby fingers are in towards each other. And your elbow pits are also facing the back wall. So if you know that your tendency is to turn your hands the wrong way so your baby fingers are together, you really want to get your baby fingers together and your elbow pits pointing backwards towards the wall behind you. Yes, perfect, Ellen. And then in this position, slide your arms out to the sides and pull back up. And out to the sides. And pull back up. And if you tend to be tight in your shoulders, your arms will gradually sneak out of this position. So just keep checking every time you get to the top of the motion. And when you get to the bottom of the motion, check and see, are your elbow pits still pointing towards the wall behind you? Right? Because if you can get your elbow pits pointing back, the inside of the bendy part of your elbow, that's the indicator that you're actually working your rotator cuff muscles. You're working your shoulder muscles, because you could still have your arms turning in and really turn a lot at your wrists and your hands and kind of still have your hands pointing backwards. And we want to get your shoulders here. On the next one, hold your arms out, maybe halfway down towards the floor, and add circles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Change directions and carry on at that pace. Beautiful. Okay, relax your arms, bring your legs back up, take your feet wide, and then again, a nice controlled windshield wiper. So slide one knee in towards center and slide the other knee in towards center, keeping your ribs nicely heavy on the floor, keeping your waist nice and still in center. Your pelvis will move a little bit, but it's kind of moving at the end of the range when your leg has gone as far as it can go, rather than you're initiating from your pelvis. Nice. Last one on each side. Beautiful. All right. Come on up to a seated position and grab your squishy ball. So hopefully this works for you sitting on the floor. If this does not work for you sitting on the floor for your knees or your hips or some reason, then you'll grab a bolster or a block or a cushion or something to get your ball a little bit higher. So you're going to sit on the ball. So you have your knees forward, you have your feet back, and the ball is kind of settled under the diamond shape of bone of your pelvis, right? Your pubic bones, the sides of your pelvis, and your tailbone. And you can just kind of shift around a little bit. See if you've got some mobility to your pelvis. Can you tailbone curl and re-lengthen? Can you shift a little side to side? And are your knees okay? Because we're going to stay here for a minute. If you are not happy here, if this position is not available to you, then you want to take the ball higher. And you want to make sure that you're kneeling on something soft, right? Like have your knees right on your mat. Right, and so if you go higher, you've got a little bit less compression at your knee joints, you've got less compression at your hip joints. So whichever is going to work better for you, that's where you're going to go. So I'm here, I may as well stay here. We're going to do a breathing series here where the ball is providing you with some feedback, some biofeedback, where you can maybe feel your pelvic floor better than you can, just kind of in an everyday pelvic floor scenario. So start with just breathe in and out. And as you breathe, do you feel any response of your pelvic floor on the ball? And the answer can be no. So If you don't feel any response on the ball, it might be because your brain is just kind of not quite connected enough to the sensations of the tissues moving to be able to feel it. It might mean that your pelvic floor tends towards a hypertonic, that it's a little bit tight all the time. And so it's not releasing as effectively when you inhale. Happens for many of us. Most people in the Western world who have pelvic floor issues, it's actually not that your pelvic floor is too tight or too loose, it's that your pelvic floor is too tight, that one's pelvic floor is too tight. So that's what we're going to focus on. Imagine this idea of your rib cage. Imagine you don't have any muscles around your rib cage, that it's just the bones of your ribs, and that you could make them a color, make them your favorite color, make them shiny or glowing, right? You want to make this really happy feeling of ease around your ribs so that you're not forcing your breath tight up into your neck and shoulders. You want to have this sense that your ribs can just slide out to the side when you inhale and slide back in when you exhale, not because of muscles, but just because they're doing this little flow along with your breath. So take a couple of breaths with that imaging and kind of get that settled into your pattern. Beautiful, glowing blue ribs, easing out and easing in, or pink, or peach, or orange, or green, whatever is your favorite color. And having kind of got some ease around your rib cage, now start to think about your belly. So as you breathe in, you're going to start your breath by letting your ribs expand, and then let your belly, kind of the end overflow, eases into your hands at the end of your inhale, and as you exhale, draw your air up from your belly through your ribs. So the first thing that's going to respond is your stomach. Again, not because you're squeezing your stomach muscles, but because we want your stomach muscles to respond to the change in the pressure, internal pressure, as you blow out. And then your diaphragm and your ribs follow on after your abdominals. One more time. And you really are trying to fully exhale, because that makes the breath in so much easier if your system is actually empty of air. So then we take our attention down one more time. So you can keep your hands on your belly because the ball is providing the feedback. Inhale, feel your ribs open and ease, feel your belly open and ease, and then deliberately relax your pelvic floor as you breathe in. And as you exhale, again, it's not a squeeze, but feel for the idea that you're breathing out from your pelvic floor, through your belly, through your diaphragm, through your ribs, and out your mouth. And release, ribs, belly, pelvic floor as you inhale. And then just feel for the effect on your tissues as you breathe out, but have this picture of your breathing out coming from your pelvic floor through your belly, along the front surface of your spine, through your diaphragm, through your ribs. So everybody's pacing is going to be a little different here. I'm not going to call out a breath pattern. I just want you to be breathing at your own speed, at your own rate. And remember that the goal is not to do this in a Pilates kind of, we're using your stomach muscles to squeeze the air out kind of way. You're just breathing and using an image of where the breath is coming in and out from to observe what your muscles are doing. One more time. Ease the breath in through your ribs, through your center, through your pelvic floor. Breathe out from your pelvic floor, from your stomach muscles, past your spine, past your diaphragm, past your ribs, and let your muscles in your brain kind of get together and create a pattern for you. And then relax. So now go back to just breathe. And see if there's any change in the quality, in the tone, in the intensity, in the awareness of change to your pelvic floor on the ball when you breathe. And it's slight, right? We're not looking for a Kegel amount of contraction when you breathe. That would be sort of the equivalent of me saying, okay, every time you breathe, we want your pelvic floor to do this and this and this and this. You would walk around all day. It would be silly. That would not be the thing. So we're looking for something quite subtle. The way your pelvic floor responds to your breath is not a full Kegel contraction amount of response, just to be clear. And so now we will actually do a Kegel amount of response. So inhale, and the most important part of this is the releasing and the relaxing. It's not the contracting. So inhale and fully invest your brain in thinking of your sit bones getting wider. Think of your pelvic floor muscles, your pubic bones, your tailbone, and the bones of the side of your pelvis all widening and draping more deeply over the ball as you breathe in. I realize you may have done 3 breaths in the amount of time it took me to say that, but this is the important part, is the releasing, widening, allowing more space for the bones, allowing more space for the muscles on the breath in. On your next exhale, deliberately think of pulling the bones together and squeezing the ball with your pelvic floor muscles. Pulling your pelvic floor muscles up a little bit away from the ball. Play around with different images, with different directions, with different ways of relating your muscles or your bones or your image relating differently to the ball, because different strategies are going to work for different people. If I give you one image, it's not going to work for all of you. So this is a functional awareness exercise. Be aware of the bones of your pelvis and how they're sitting on the ball. And they are the home for your pelvic floor muscles. You have a whole bunch of pelvic floor muscles. It's not one muscle. And they travel on angles. There's 8 muscles, and they travel on diagonals from pubic bones back and from tailbone forward and around the center of the space. And so the ball is great because it's providing you with some sensation to picture that, if you like to think anatomically. But here on the exhale, you deliberately engage your pelvic floor muscles. Slide them up. I don't necessarily love the word squeeze. I like up better. It's actually anatomically what's happening, pressure-wise, that's what's happening. And on the inhale, remember, the more important than the contraction is the release. So on your inhales, you are fully investing in widening the bones and letting your pelvic floor slide back down towards the ball. Exhale, narrow the bones a little bit, slide the pelvic floor up away from the ball. Inhale, release, widen, lower, drop. Check in with your shoulders and your neck. I can promise you that putting your shoulders into your ears is not actually going to make this work any better. Last breath. And relax. And then come on off the ball. And I would say maybe stand up and move around and straighten out your knees and your hips for a moment. Take as many crawl steps as you need to get out of this super comfy position. And just stretch out your legs and your knees and your hips for a moment. Just take a few steps around, shimmy it out. And then I think what we'll do is let's do a calf stretch hip hinge to kind of counteract all of that. So grab your half dome or your rolled up towel or your mat or whatever you use for your calf stretch. Bring your right foot onto your half dome or your rolled up towel. Have your left foot back behind you and pointing straight forward. Look at it because your brain will lie to you, or at least my brain lies to me and tells me that that's straightforward, which it is not. And then super anchor your right heel into the ground. Keep your legs straight and slide forward and slide back. So you get a little opportunity for a bit of pelvic listing, side butt work in your right hip, the outside of your right hip, because you're using your right leg to bring your whole pelvis forward, like you're paddling a canoe, right? You're pulling your right leg back like a paddle, and your left leg is just coming along for the ride. Last one. And then change over and do the other side. Left foot forward, right foot back, right foot pointing forward, pelvis nice and stable, legs long and straight. Feel for the weight of your left heel into the floor. Press your leg down and step forward. So you're really trying to drive this motion from the side and the back of your left leg, as though it was your left leg that was moving in the ground, as opposed to it's your right leg pulling forward. See if you can keep your right leg straight. Nice. Couple more. Beautiful. Okie dokie. Since we're here and standing, let's do a little standing side butt. So if you are a little dodgy with your balance, you could go close to a wall, because we're going to stand on one leg for a moment. So let's start with your right leg. Press both feet pointing forward to the best of your ability. Press your right hip down into the floor. Think of vacuuming your right leg bone into your right hip socket. So you're going to end up in a bit of a list. So you're tipping a little bit off to the right. And then press your left leg out to the side. So this is the standing version of what we did lying down. Your pelvis is on a bit of an angle here so that your leg can clear the floor, but then it doesn't move, right? So you're not doing any of this nonsense to make your leg move, sliding your spine around. Totally still straight line from the crown of your head to your pubic bones. 5, 4, 3, 2, last one, and circle. 1, lots of abs here. 2, to keep your balance. 3, keep your spine still. 4, 5, change directions. 5, 4, working through your foot. 3, working through your hip. 2, and last one, and bring your leg down, and then shift over, same thing, other side. Feel your leg bone vacuuming into your hip socket and pulling down towards the floor until you get to the place where, oh yeah, okay, cool, my right leg is off the ground. Super engage your abdominals for support and stability, and press. Last one. Hold your leg out and then circle. 1, 2, 3, 4. One more is 5. Change directions. And last one. And bring everything down. And then grab a yoga strap, which I have somewhere, yoga strap, or a scarf or a belt or something that's not stretchy. And as always, the hardest part about this is getting your strap set up so that it doesn't, you make the loop that doesn't slide. Or if that makes you insane, which it sometimes does to me, because I think I might be in that, you can just tie a knot. We're going to do the inner thigh, the actual inner thigh release. So this is the one where you want to have your legs maybe 6 inches apart. So either tie your legs together, like make a knot in your yoga strap, or get your loops set so that your inner thighs are totally relaxed. And that is harder to achieve than it seems for some people. I would totally be one of those people. I have lots of apparent range. I can take my knees way out to the sides, but my actual muscles are quite tight. My ligaments allow me a lot of space because I'm hypermobile. My muscles are tight. So the idea is that you want to be able to relax your arms. So if you have to hang on to the strap, I'd like it if you could do something else to tie your legs together. And once you get yourself set, use your hands to palpate your inner thighs, poke at your inner thighs. And what you're looking for is the line of muscle that runs from your pubic bones up along the inside of your leg. And you want to run your fingers back and forth. So you're going across the seam of your pants to just check and see. Once you get yourself down here and you're lying down, you're like, ha, I'm totally relaxed. I don't know what she's talking about. I could go 3 feet apart. You want to feel for, are those muscles still working? If those muscles are still working, if you can feel working muscle here in your inner thighs, then scooch your legs closer together. You want to try and get to a place where you are completely and totally relaxed, or as close to that as is possible. Jean, bring your feet together so that your feet are together, but your knees are relaxing it to the side. You want to make sure that the strap is in a position close enough to your knees that you really can just let go. Right, which is why a stretchy band is less helpful for this, because it won't hold your legs. This is about your nervous system as much as it's about your muscles. We want to get to a place where your nervous system's messaging is, it is completely safe for me to totally relax these muscles. They can't go anywhere. So they need to be completely held by the strap so that there's no effort required on your part to hold your legs in place. And then you chill out. And you breathe. And you could notice in this position, if you're not making it happen, is there any sense of that pressure connection, that relationship between your pelvic floor and your abdominal muscles and your diaphragm where it lives in your ribs? And so specifically, when you inhale, can you feel a bit of release through your pelvic floor? And as you exhale, can you feel that little bit of tightening, contracting, lifting, change in position as a response to the change in pressure? And if you're still not feeling a response, just remember that it's possible that what's happening is that your pelvic floor muscles are sort of chronically held in the tightened position rather than the released position, and letting go is the part of the cycle that you want to get more of. All right. So then slide the yoga strap off and go back into just your basic stretch. So feet together, knees out to your sides. See how that feels after doing the release. Oh, look at that increase in range, Nicole. Does that feel different? Nice. So hang out with that for a breath or two. And hopefully each time we've gone through this, you've found something has changed. Your range has changed, or your sense of ease, or the degree of stretch sensation, or the planting of your ribs, or a change in pressure in your neck and shoulders or back, or it just feels nice. And then bring your legs all the way back up. And grab your squishy ball again. And we will do some more work, but this time, instead of having your feet mat distance apart, have your feet, legs hip distance apart, or ball distance apart. So I think, for me at least, it's a little harder to keep my inner thighs, or to keep my hip flexors from firing up when my legs are parallel. So just be alert to that as a possibility. The ball goes halfway between your knees and your pelvis, heels in line with your sit bones, more or less, feet pointing forward. Squeeze and release. Squeeze and release. So initially, we're just looking for the bones of your pelvis and your spine to stay still while you move your legs in and out. You want to deliberately release until just before you drop the ball, and then squeeze in as hard as you can without tucking or tilting or arching or any other spinal movement. And then you want to refine it a little bit more to squeeze as hard as you can without moving your spine or your pelvis, and without getting your hip flexors involved, without the muscles in the fronts of your legs and the fronts of your hips turning on. So it can be very helpful to use your hands again to gauge whether that's happening. So that might mean you have to press a little bit less, or that you have to change a little bit how you press. When I keep my hip flexors relaxed, I feel my stomach muscles more. They respond more to the squeeze of the inner thighs when I don't get into my hip flexors, so you might experience that. And now we're going to refine it again by timing it with your breath and your pelvic floor. So start just with your legs relaxed. Inhale to stay and relax your pelvic floor as you breathe in. And then slowly blow out through your mouth. And as you do, you squeeze the ball and you have that sense of your breath coming from your pelvic floor, through your belly, through your ribs, through your chest, through your mouth. Hold until your exhale is completely done. And then inhale through your ribs, through your belly, release your pelvic floor, release the ball. So this is a much slower squeeze and release pattern, because you're trying to move your legs at the same speed it takes to complete this, 2-inch, 3-inch motion with your whole entire amount of time it takes you to breathe in, and the whole entire time it takes you to breathe out. And you are deliberately forming that direction of breath, so that ultimately what you get is your pelvic floor releasing as you inhale and decrease the squeeze on the ball, and contracting as you exhale and put more pressure and squeeze on the ball. Two more breaths, 2 more squeeze and release cycles at your own pace. So I've just had a text from somebody who thought they had signed up for the class this morning, but didn't, and so didn't get the email. If that has ever happened to you, I have a suggestion. It's the same Zoom link for every iteration of the same class. Like this class is always the same link from week to week to week. Whatever classes you like to take, go into the website or go back to one of your previous reminder emails, copy the link and stash it in a document somewhere. I have a Google Doc of all the class links. And if something ever goes sideways with Wellness Living or goes sideways with our website, you can just use that link and the teacher can sign you in when you get there. Just so you know, because I hate it when people miss class. It makes me sad. All right, release the ball, feet together, knees out to the side or legs straight down, whatever you need to do to now take a break, because hopefully, again, that was a lot of inner thigh work. That is my hope, that your inner thighs are a little bit shaky maybe. So whatever you need to do to kind of unhook that. And we're going to finish by standing up and doing a little goddess squat. So come back to your mat. How about we do this so you can see my head for the last part of the class? So you're going to take your feet as wide as makes sense for you. It doesn't need to be like the widest shape you could ever possibly be in, but you know, wide-ish. And turn your legs out right from the back of your legs in your hip socket, and then slowly bend your knees out to the sides. So this doesn't need to be far, right? You don't need to be all the way down to the ground, but you do want to be lined up pretty much from your hips to your knees, to your ankles, to the middles of your feet, so that your legs are not kind of collapsing forward, which doesn't typically feel great for your knees. And then in this position, think of your inner thighs and your pelvic floor. Slide your knees wider, lengthen your inner thighs, release your pelvic floor, come down to what feels like a good angle for you. And then pull your inner thighs together, pull your pelvic floor up towards the front of your spine as you straighten your legs. Release, open, widen, but with control. There is nothing collapsy about this. And then pull back up. 3. And 2, and your range might be this, right? And that would be excellent. Last one. Pull your inner thighs together, walk your feet back to center, and have a fantastic weekend. Thank you so much for coming and spending your Saturday morning with me. Mwah.
Allison.
Side note, which I didn't mention at the time, if you feel like that pelvic floor sitting on the ball series is helpful, but the sitting down, like that sitting position didn't work for you, you can just sit on a chair. Like put the ball on a chair and sit on the chair. You might find that the chair is a little high once you put the ball on it, so you could do like sitting on the chair on the ball with your feet on your yoga block, just to get your proportions right for your height and your length. But it's, if you have any issues with pelvic floor stuff, if you have any issues with lower back stuff, if you have any issues with breathing, it's a really good one. And it's partly about the actual pressure being applied by the ball on the muscle tissue, but it's partly about, it's, you know, it's that nervous system awareness thing that's giving you something to feel in response to your breath and your breathing. And it helps to get the pelvic floor breathing pattern better set. Because if you're not aware of it, it's very hard to change patterns. Like it's, imagine trying to learn to do a free throw without a ball. Like, how would you know? How would you know? I couldn't do a free throw to save my life. I don't know why. That's the image I picked. But like, imagine, oh, do you have any sense of success? Do you have any sense of progression that you're getting any better at it if you never know whether a ball actually went through the hoop? if you're trying to do pelvic floor stuff, if you're trying to deal with back issues or breathing issues, if you can't feel what's happening with your pelvic floor in response to your breathing, it's very hard to change that pattern. It's really hard to know what your pattern is and what to change. So the ball provides a really nice, soft, non-threatening, easy for your nervous system to settle piece of feedback that helps make those connections a little bit more smoothly. And even if you don't have pelvic floor issues, it's just really good to work on that stuff periodically, especially, you know, if your plan is to live into menopause, which I assume is the case for all of us. It's good to have awareness of that stuff before you get there. For you know, the couple of you who are still in an earlier phase of life. Mwah. There you go. That's me being bossy for the day.
Thanks, Alice.
Thank you.
It's so nice to see you, Susan.
Bye.